And thank you for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. It is Truth for Our Time, and we give you truth that you can use, help when the headlines hit home. It's Wednesday, but it's after the election. It's November 5th. We have survived another election. And while I really try not to get too tied up into the elections, because frankly, I think the whole electoral process, and I say this with the disclaimer that I'm a National Committee woman, right? I think it has almost become an overwhelming process for so many Americans. It's so all-consuming, much more than was ever intended to be. We are to watch the representative republic is a few watched by the many, and we've had issues of late with Americans not paying attention and being uninvolved, but these elongated election cycles, overwhelming campaigns, negative ads, phone calls to the point where people are disconnecting their landlines. Really, the PACs for the phone companies might consider also somehow lobbying to shorten these election cycles. And it's not, we have research that shows it's not that they're just, Americans are uninformed. They are distracted trying to keep up with the demands of an oppressive government, government regulations, overreach, overstepping, to where it's hard for Americans to even make a living, to even spend time with their families, to relax and do the things that they would enjoy. They're so busy and consumed just marching to the beat that the government, and in many cases the schools, public schools, set forward with these schedules that are just incredibly time-consuming and out of step and out of balance with the academic productivity and results that we're seeing. So there are so many things pulling at the American family. The overextended, overwhelming election cycle does not help. By the time it finally gets here, the election candidates are, the volunteers are weary. The people are somewhat apathetic. And so, I'll be the first to tell you, we're ready for it to be done. This time, there was a lot weighing on this election. Some people are calling it a mandate. I would say it was a stopgate. People are not pleased with what they see coming out of Washington, D.C., and I would say Obama's policies. He made the comment that his policies were on the ballot, though he wasn't, and I think it was what sealed the deal for many voters. They don't like his policies, and he hasn't yet understood that the sovereignty lies with the people. The sovereignty in this nation lies with the people, not with the president. That's the difference in our republic, that we live in a constitutional republic. And we'll be talking with David Barton later in the show at 10:30. David Barton will join us, and he'll talk not just about win, lose, what happened in the election. He's going to talk about moving forward. Ballots aside, winners aside, moving forward as America, because it doesn't just hinge on Election Day. It's how we live. It's our policies. It's that overwhelming, that distraction that so many American families are facing that I talked about. We need to move forward in ways that can allow individuals to succeed, to prosper, to follow their dreams, their hopes, the American dream. Have we had death to the American dream, or can we revive it? Can we revive America? So we'll be talking to David Barton. His newest book, U-Turn, Restoring America to Her Roots, the strength of its roots. And so we'll be talking to him about that, and that's at 10:30. In the meantime, we have something we have attempted it before. We've done it very well. Ryan Northfield is my producer, and Ryan, thank you so much for everything you do to make these things possible. We're going to attempt a simulcast with Jan Mickleson right here in Des Moines. Jan Mickleson is a very well-respected voice on AM talk radio across the nation and even the globe now with the internet. And so we'll be talking with some Iowa folks, Doug Gross, Steve Dace, AJ Spiker, about the Iowa election results, and doing that simulcast we've done before with other shows across the nation. We'll see how that goes locally. I may or may not interject, depending on how these are people who all have an opinion, and I may just sit back and listen and let you listen too. We'll see. And then we'll break and go with our show with David Barton. But I think that's going to be a fun thing for us to attempt. And I also need to thank my sponsors, Crave, Americans, Christians for America. Crave, we thank them for coming alongside and giving us the encouragement and the support to bring this show to you. We thank them for what they're doing. We talk about changing those lives and helping people find deliverance from life-addicting situations, addictions that are dangerous. That's exactly what they do, and so you can find them on the web, ChristiansForAmerica.com. And then we also thank Webcast One Live for allowing us to use their studios and working with them. And at 10:30 we'll be coming on with our Americans for Family Radio audience, and we thank J. Michael McCoy, for allowing us his airtime. And we'll do that under the Restoring Banner Hope. If you want someone else to hear this show, the David Barton portion will air this Sunday evening, 6:30 p.m. Our shows air 6:30 p.m. on American Family Radio Networks. You can go on that website and find a link or a page that tells you where the stations are located near you. The several stations in Iowa and across the nation, and then they can hear this show under the banner of Restoring Banner, 6:30 p.m. Sunday evenings. If you missed the show and you want an archive, they are available at Tamara Scott Live on YouTube. Tamara Scott Live on YouTube. So that's a great way for folks to join us that way. So we do have a historical news here. Joni Ernst won her seat. So Iowa sends a woman to Senate. And I know that's historical. But beyond that, Iowa sends a person who won on her merits, who will uphold the Constitution. She's been a soldier. She's been in the legislature. She's well qualified. But from her stance, she will do what brings us back to our constitutional foundations. And that's what excites so many of us. There were some other big wins last night that people really aren't talking about. Colonel Gordon Klingenschmidt, someone I've interviewed several times on this show, previous radio stations, won his race in Colorado last night. American Family Association had a candidate win theirs in Michigan as well. That's huge. That's wonderful. You don't have to run from your principles to be elected. In fact, when you stand on them, people will stand with you. Now, I'm going to kind of watch and listen here because we're going to be joining WHO Radio 1040 AM with Jan Mickleson live. And I want to make sure that we're ready to do that when we can. And thank you for listening in as we attempt this. And as I said, I don't know how it's going to go. We'll watch and see and learn together. So as a rule, Republicans did have a good win last night. We ended up with 52 Republican seats in the Senate, 45 Democrats. And from what I understand, West Virginia has a couple of independents one Democrat that may caucus with the Republicans and one independent that may caucus with the Republicans, which would change it. And if Mary Landrieu wins her runoff December 6th, it could be as high as 57. So that number has been probably updated since this came from the RNC in the middle of the night. And in Iowa, we didn't quite take the Senate as we had hoped. We're waiting on a couple of results. One race hasn't been called yet that I know of, Shelgren, and he'll be one that will stand and not bend nor kneel even to those in his own party who would have him not stand. So I hear the music now. We're going to go with Jan. Stay tuned with us as we attempt this simulcast on the Iowa Analysis.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jan Mickleson. What we're going to do now is we're going to chat with a bunch of people who have strong political views from many different vantage points. We carefully avoided talking about politics during the last hour because we knew we were going to have an overdose and overload of it during this hour. We have A.J. Spiker, the former chair of the Iowa Republican Party. He continues to be active in the political sphere. Welcome aboard, A.J.
Thank you, Jan.
Also, Steve Dace, he used to sit in where I'm sitting right now in this particular chair. No, he broke that chair. There's several chairs, as I remember, Steve. Doing his workout, a daily workout that he called a talk show, and he is a syndicated talk show host now, speaks all over the country, syndicated columnist, Washington Times and others, author of Rules for Patriots. It's a much-quoted, very snotty look at leadership principles. It's a fun read now in its second printing, I see.
It is. There's that many desperate people out there, Jan. I'm excited about that.
Well, that's really cool. Also, Doug Gross, he's been on with us a number of times in the past. He's a Republican insider, former gubernatorial candidate, and you'll see his expertise every once in a while. On, I think it's TV13, you do the insider.
Yeah, I'm actually going to do it this weekend.
All right. Very cool. Thank you for coming over.
Good to be with you, Jan.
Also, Tamara Scott has joined us on our Newsmaker line. She is National Republican Committee woman, and she's also afflicted with talk show disease. and she's on our Newsmaker line. Welcome aboard, Tamara.
Good morning, Jan and everyone. Thank you.
Hi, Tamara.
I'm going to give you the first shot, Tamara, because I know your time is limited here this morning. Tell us what you think about Joni and her election.
Well, I think it's very exciting, and exciting for us that she was elected on merit. Yes, she's a female. Yes, we made history, but even more, she was elected on merit. Proof that you don't have to run from a platform. When you stand on it, people will stand with you. And I think it gives us hope. It gives us encouragement that she will take our issues to Iowa. But even more, some people are calling it a mandate, last night's election. I would say it's a stopgate of what they fear coming out of D.C. And now, with a cautious optimism, we're hoping that those we elected will stand strong, not compromise, but stand strong.
So you're on the National Committee, the Republican National Committee. How does this outpouring affect you, your position, your job, and what you think will occur at your level over the next few months?
Well, I think it gives us a hope. Obviously, it's a much more pleasant outlook than had we had suffered great losses last night. So I think it gives us great hope to move forward. But again, it encourages us. You heard Reince Priebus just weeks before the election, not walking away from social issues, not walking away from marriage. And I don't think that's what Americans want. I'm having David Barton. He talked about my talk show disease here. David Barton has written a book with George Berna on U-Turn, and how we restore America to her roots. And Americans, the statistics are showing Americans are coming back to the values that made this country strong. The pendulum is swinging back.
All right, let's talk to some of the folks who are joining us here in the studio. You're the most long-serving observer of the political process. Doug Gross, give us your first assessment.
My assessment of last night is a resounding repudiation of Obama. People are not happy with how he's running the government, how he's running the country. They're very fearful of the future as a result of that, and they wanted change. The question is, what kind of change will Republicans give them? I don't think it's been exactly defined. I think in many respects it was sort of like a Seinfeld election. It wasn't about anything. And as a result of that, now Republicans are required very quickly to decide how they're going to govern the country, or at least assist in the governing of the country. And that remains to be seen.
Well, they've been in power now for one day.
Yeah, one day.
How come they haven't fixed stuff?
I don't know. Get going.
Steve, you have, because of what you do now, you are able to talk to people all over the country and talk and meet to politicians from all over the country. And you do so from the vantage point of Iowa, the first in the nation caucus state. So what are you going to be telling your people tonight?
Well, to me, I think I agree that there's three big narratives out of this election. The first one is what Doug just mentioned. I think that the American people have seen what Marxism in America really looks like. We don't have a liberal in the White House. We have a Marxist. And they have said we don't want that. Now, what's open for debate is what they want next, and I think that's what 2016 will be about. Yeah, the other two big narratives out of last night, I think the war on women meme is dead, and dead as a doornail. There's been a stake driven through it. I mean, the Republicans sent the youngest female member to Congress. They sent a black woman from Utah, a state with a checkered racial past, 2 Republican U.S. senators. Wendy Davis lost the female vote in Texas, and Mark Uterus in Colorado lost. So I think the war on women meme is dead. And then I think the third one, though, which may surprise longtime listeners here on WHO to hear me say this, but I think we can look back now and actually say that the Republican Party worked the way it was supposed to. The ruling class last year had Potomac fever on guns, going to war in Syria, on defund Obamacare, and the base stood up and said, no, we want to fight on those things, and they did. And then we had a big fight in the primaries, and that drove the establishment candidates more to the right. And then the establishment actually embraced their base down the stretch and tried to energize their base, unlike what they didn't do in 2012. And the result is that you saw the establishment and the conservatives work together to annihilate Democrats last night. And it's really the first time in a long time that I actually think the Republican Party actually worked the way it was supposed to.
What you left out one thing I'm kind of curious about all of you in this. Whether you said the War and Women meme is over, and I think
it is a mime now.
It is a mime now.
They're doing it on MSNBC. I was on there yesterday. If you turn there, you might see them miming it now.
I saw that, by the way.
Yeah.
Is the race card dead?
I think the race card is dead, too. I think that when you see Michelle Nunn get 27% of the white vote in Georgia, I think the race baiting, the gender baiting is dead. And I think you're going to see Joni Ernst day one. Once the presidential cycle begins, if Republicans were smart, they would bring Joni Ernst out there day one throughout the entire process as their chief weapon to deconstruct Hillary, because they're going to try gender baiting with her like they tried race baiting, but I just don't think it will work. And the good thing about that is that means they actually have to beat us on the issues, and I don't think they can beat us there when it's about the issues.
Usually I've noticed, Doug Gross, they don't talk about issues. They just talk about how bad the other person is.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of that in this campaign cycle, frankly. I mean, there was a lot of personality. I mean, I would argue that one of the major reasons why Joni Ernst won was her personality. She had a very attractive personality. People liked her. She was very disciplined. She was a hardworking candidate. She represented Iowa values. So I think in many respects that was a personality-driven contest.
And I've asked her a number of different times if she can tell us where she buys her toothpaste, because I want that.
Those are really good choppers, aren't they, Jen? They are really good choppers.
Well, AJ Spiker, you ran the Iowa Republican Party, the chair of the Republican Party. Iowa Republicans did really well on the national races, captured 2 seats, in fact 3 seats, and recaptured the governor's seat, and it strengthened itself at the Iowa legislative side, but made little or no progress at all in toppling the Democratic control of the State House. What is your thinking about that?
Well, I think, obviously the Senate leadership needs to take a look at how they're running their campaigns. And obviously when you have Mike Gronstal as the leader, he's bringing in a tremendous amount of money as the Senate Democrat leader. But Republicans haven't been able to match that. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the governor or who, sending money through the state party, it just didn't get there to the candidates to win the races. And I talked to one candidate that should have been in a pickup district, and he was told in August that his seat wasn't one they were going to compete for. And I think if you're entering a wave year like 2014 is, you have to have those resources.
Was this a missed opportunity?
I think it was. I think it was a big missed opportunity. And, in New Hampshire, they took control last night of both chambers, and Scott Brown lost. And in Iowa, Joni Ernst won overwhelmingly. We had Rod Blum win, and that was in a lean Democrat congressional district. So I think it was a lost opportunity last night on the Iowa Senate, and it may be one we don't get back for several years.
I can't remember, gentlemen, can you remember any, I'm going to take a break here in just a moment, can you remember any state Senate race that got in your mind or that you thought was competitive? I can't think of any race that even comes to mind, even intruded in the public awareness.
They played on so few playgrounds with regard to the Iowa Senate. When you have a wave election like this one, you want to be playing on as many fields as you possibly can, because surprising things happen. They played in only about 4 races competitively, and those were 2 were holds and 2 were potentially pickup. They lost the numbers game.
If you look at the way political science works,
right,
when the guy at the top of your ticket is winning by 20 points, the next statewide, the next person's winning by 8 points statewide, you're picking up 4 seats in your state legislature to gain 0 net seats in your state Senate. Political science doesn't work that way, guys. That cannot happen. That's like a statistical almost impossibility in political science. So either Mike Gronstal is the greatest tactician the Democrats have ever had, or somebody should be fired for that. I mean, this should not happen. On a night when you're winning the governorships in Massachusetts, Maryland, and the People's Republic of Illinois, you can't pick
Thank
up
God
one.
for that, by the way.
I mean, you can't pick up 1 net seat in the state Senate. I mean, there's a better chance in political science models. I will walk out of here and get struck by lightning twice than you could recreate that again in a lab.
But I don't even remember any of the races being competitive, or nobody was talking about. They were totally off the radar.
You're right, and Doug is right. This is an election where you just start spraying buckshot around, hoping to pin the tail on the donkey, so to speak, because the environment is so much in your favor. And I said in your chair, that's what we saw in 2006 when the Democrats had that kind of election.
We lost it a year ago when we didn't recruit competitive candidates in enough races. They ran a fundraising effort that was largely corporate-based, focused on turnout and very few races, and they had no money for TV at the end. It was malpractice.
The only group that I saw active at the Senate level in the last few weeks trying to do anything were the gun lobby people. That's it. They're the only ones out there who say, hey, our issue is not being addressed in this Iowa Senate race, and we're going to at least raise a stink about it. That's the only group that I'm aware of that did.
There was very, very little activity in those races because they polled them in August, Jan. They found that most of them weren't competitive at that point, and so as a result, they couldn't raise money even when they tried.
All right, I need to take a short time out here. Oh, Tamara, get in on this before the break. What have you been thinking as you've been listening?
What the energy in that room must feel like, I can't imagine.
Well, you can join us.
I would have loved to have been there in person with you. But you're right. There's so many things going on. But I think this just gives us a foot forward. For Americans, this is our chance. This is a reprieve. But it's nothing saying we can sit back, and you all know that.
Okay. Well, we'll take a short time out, come back to the conversation. Folks, those of you who have been listening, in case you're wondering who these people are, A.J. Spiker, former Iowa Republican chair, Doug Gross, a Republican insider, Steve Day, syndicated talk show host. Tamara is also an activist, and she's with the National Republican National Committee. She's a committee woman, and as I said, she's afflicted with my disease. A brief time out, back in a moment as Michael's in the Morning for Steve.
If there's one thing a farmer knows, it's that the dirt is no place.
All right. So we are doing this show with Jan Mickleson Live, and I want to come to you with what happened in West Virginia. There are so many interesting things on this race, and to be honest with you, I really try not to get into these election analysis, and it's so easy to sit back and second guess and armchair quarterback. But I want to share with you just some good news that happened all around the nation. And so, usually I come to you very nonpartisan because the issues that are facing us don't discriminate. Economic troubles don't discriminate. Bad policy doesn't discriminate. They talked about the war on women, but we didn't mention that 3.7 more women are in poverty since Obama has taken control, since his policies have come into place. Same with the minorities. I think we have a rise there. Average American has less money in their pocket than they would have, as someone said. I think it's Rod Blum is saying, with the if we'd had the Reagan recovery, you'd have $1,000 more at the end of the year than you have now after the recession. So the policies are nonpartisan. The harm that will be done by bad policy doesn't care who it discriminates against. It will destroy. Bad policy destroys. And so all the more reason we have to be very careful who we do elect and what policies we put in place. And so in West Virginia, the National Committee woman, Melody Potter, another one of your strong Republican National Committee members who is committed to keeping us on the right track with our foundations, says we flipped the delegates, the House 64 of 100, first time in 83 years. Senate's tied 17-17. We're going to get someone to switch parties possibly. We won the U.S. Senate, all three congressional seats in West Virginia. I think you heard last night, too, they were surprised in the Virginia seat. They hadn't even looked at that one and possibly the Republican winning. And again, I think the less publicity on it, sometimes the better. We saw that in a race earlier this year. Voters were allowed to vote without a lot of outside influence in the Cantor race. And those they can consider more conservative were the winners. And, of course, I just talked to you about Gordon Klingenschmidt. You remember him as the chaplain who refused to bow down to the atheists and the agnostics and quit honoring Jesus as a chaplain in the military, praying in the name of Jesus. He just won his election. The vote 70% for Gordon Klingenschmidt, 30% for Lois, a Democrat, in Colorado, nonetheless. In Colorado, and check and make sure I'm right on that, but this is where it just doesn't fly. And in the book we're going to talk about with David Barton at 10:30, more Americans, an increasing number of Americans want churches to stand up and talk about issues. They want religion to be influential in their life. So, and on policy. So I think we're going to see some of this. And then the other race, Michigan. Michigan's not always a very favorable state to conservatives. And we see that Gary Glenn, AFA in Michigan, won 55-45 in Midland and the Bay Counties. So are we getting ready to go back, Ryan? All right, I'm trying to watch the clock because we've got David Barton joining us as well. Another thing I want to tell you about, if you haven't gotten a hold of these from Hillsdale College, I would very much like you to get online with Hillsdale College, the Imprimis, and order those. They're free of charge, but the teaching that is in those, this past one, September 2014, History and Danger of Administrative Law, deals exactly with what we're seeing. You can see mine is all marked up, but it deals exactly with what we're seeing with this president taking powers that are not his, with legislatures handing over powers that should belong to the legislative body to bureaucrats. That's how we're losing our freedom and our liberty. We need to go back now with WHO Jan Mickleson.
If recent history is to be compared.
Well, I think what Tamara said is very true in that it's a stopgap, and I think that whether this is a historical election depends on what happens in 2016. Did we essentially just say enough is enough and we just want to stop what's happening right now, or are we going to chart a dramatically different course, more similar to our first principles and founding traditions? And I think that's really what 2016 is about.
Well, our first instinct, I've heard of some of the political class saying, well, since we won so big now, we can't mess it up by being too radical. So we'll just be messing up our 2016 opportunities. So let's not push on anything too hard.
Well, define radical. What's too radical?
Enforcing the law would be.
Not giving. I mean, is too radical not giving people the policies they just voted against?
Well,
I don't think that's too radical.
Let me play this off of you. This is the ABC reporter John Carl. He's a White House reporter, and he was talking about his assessment of the Obama response to what you have been describing, and this lasts about half a minute. If I can make it work at all here. Okay, let's make it work. Is it going? Okay, let's try to make. I hate it when my timing. Okay. I'm not sure why it's not working, but it's there. And
do you want us to use telepathy, Jan?
My mind, in its mind. I'm going to make this work, even if it's embarrassing. It's working.
Jonathan Carl, the House already controlled by Republicans. If they control the Senate after tonight, and that's a big if, how does the president get anything done in these final 2 years? What's the White House saying tonight?
Well, it won't be easy. What White House officials are saying that you can expect the president to set an aggressive and defiant tone tomorrow. You're not going to see any mea culpas, no big firings, no change in direction. Officials tell me the president is prepared to aggressively pursue his agenda, using his power of executive authority where he can't work with Congress. And the big one is going to be on immigration reform. White House officials tell me that the president will move forward with an executive order on immigration reform, no matter how big a shellacking Democrats get tonight.
Wow. If that happens, what happened?
Well, he's having a press conference, I think, this afternoon. So we'll find out very soon, Jan. If he takes a sort of defiant tone rather than a conciliatory tone, he'll have absolutely no legacy for a presidency, none at all. When he has an opportunity here, if he really thinks about this clearly, Republicans, one thing that unites Republicans is we clearly think we need to reform the federal budget, entitlement reform, and we think we need to reform the tax structure, which is, I would call, immoral. And we have to do those things. And if the president would engage with us to accomplish those things, I think that could get done and you'd have a dramatic impact on the country long term. If he wants to. If he doesn't want to, then 2016 will exactly be a referendum on the future of the country, and it won't be to Obama's liking, that's for sure.
The McConnell folks who just won decisively, he's likely, what do you think, Steve and AJ? Do you think he's likely to be the mucky muck? The Republicans are pushing him back to the top again?
Well, you saw a preview this past week. McConnell said he wasn't going to use reconciliation, a 51 vote, to defund Obamacare. That lasted for about 24 hours once that news hit Red State, Breitbart, and the conservative media sphere. And then the next day he was in the pages of the Washington Times saying that he would use reconciliation to defund Obamacare, a straight-up vote. I think if you're a conservative, I'd grab the tub o' corn, and get a front row seat, because we're going to have 2, maybe 3 conservative senators, certainly Paul and Cruz and maybe Rubio, running for president today. And they're going to use the power of a majority in the U.S. Senate to make their case to Republican primary voters. And I'm going to tell you, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think that whatever plans the ruling class is hatching now to stay out of the line of sight and fire of the dreaded liberal media, which doesn't have nearly the power that people think they do, I think whatever plans they're hatching now with their consultants are likely going to go up in smoke once the reality of the primary environment hits next year.
The people are asking, like the McConnell types, is if the president goes forth in this unconstitutional and illegal amnesty just by executive order, that's an impeachable offense. Are you going to, now with your a majority in the Senate, you're going to go forward and do something like that if he does this? Oh, no, that would just mess us up for 20.
Reince Priebus said last week on a call with the Tea Party that Republicans would, quote, do everything in their power, unquote, to stop Obama's executive amnesty, and, quote, I can't be any stronger in what I say than that, unquote. And I can promise you the base of the Republican Party will hold them to that. If there is one issue that this...
Are you pulling me away? My producer's pulling me away. I wasn't quite ready to go yet. I wanted to continue, and what they were talking about was what's going to happen if Obama goes against the will of the people. Remember that the sovereignty is with the people, not with a supposed dictator. And if he does this in this next, what we call sometimes a lame duck session, or some people are calling it a zombie Congress, if he does this, nothing brings people together like a mutual enemy. And if he proves himself to be an enemy of this nation, an enemy of our sovereignty, an enemy of our freedom, our liberty, our Constitution, I think it could be what brings people together across the aisle, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, whatever label you want to put on us. It could bring people together and enough to stop him. So we're going to take a break real quickly right here. Thank our sponsors, Crave, Christians for America, webcast1live.com. And we'll be right back after these messages with David Barton. We'll be talking about his new book, U-Turn, and analyzing the election moving forward. What happens, win or lose? What do we need to do to restore this nation to the strength it once was and to the strength of its roots? We'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
Metro Ford's on everywhere. Metro Ford's on everywhere. See 'em here, see 'em there. You got bad credit? We don't care. Metro Ford's on everywhere. Metro Ford's on everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com.
Metro Ford's on everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com today.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AAMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AAMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope.
And thank you for staying tuned with us. I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to us under the banner of Restoring Hope, and we thank Webcast One for making it possible. And we also thank J. Michael McCoy for sharing his air with us. And if you're joining us, we're thrilled to have you. If you want to hear more of the show when we tape it live on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m., you can always do that on webcast1live.com. Webcast1live.com is where we tape every morning, Wednesday morning live. If you want an archive of this show at any time, you can go to Tamara Scott Live on YouTube. Tamara Scott Live on YouTube. We don't make it difficult. Just go there and get a portion of the show and send it to a friend so that they too can help get information and learn. Mac's portion of Restoring Hope usually deals with individual issues, addictions, making life better, and deliverance, and for people out of those addicting lifestyles. I usually take it from the civic arena. How do we help restore hope as a country, as a nation, as a community? And so today joining me, who better to do that, is David Barton, founder of wallbuilders.com. David has recently written a book as well, U-Turn. I'm holding it up for those of you who are watching on Webcast One Live. U-Turn is the name of the book, Restoring America to the strengths of its roots. So first we'll welcome David on, and we'll discuss the election a little bit, but moving forward, win or lose, if we would have lost, if we would have won, what do we do to bring America back to her strength, and how perfect he could join us today. Thank you, David, for joining us.
Great to be with you, Tamara. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate everything you do, talking across the country, helping people understand, one, our Christian heritage, but two, what happens, what do we need to do to make our country strong again? So your quick reflection on the election last night.
It was a dichotomy in some ways. As far as Republicans are concerned, there was a lot of victories. As far as conservatives are concerned, there were also a lot of victories. It is striking to me that, and I was doing national TV coverage last night, and so we were on for hours, but when you saw the East Coast numbers start coming in, there were so many races where the polls were not just wrong, they were real wrong. Virginia Gillespie had been down on average of 9.7 points throughout the last several weeks, and that was a neck-and-neck race all the way till the end, nearly a 10-point wrong there. The same in Georgia, where that they were all convinced that Purdue might get 43, 44%, but it's definitely going to a runoff. He won with 53%, no runoff needed. Third-party candidate didn't have an impact there. There were just a lot of races where the polls were like 10 points off. What was same with LePage, the governor up in Maine. He was 12 points down. He won the race. But then you had other races that were very, very close. Tillis in North Carolina, races like that. Brown versus Shaheen up in New Hampshire. And what struck me was, it's interesting that anytime you had a solid conservative, man, the win was massive. But anytime there was a squishy kind of moderate, that's where the polls were fairly accurate, was on Tillis and Hagan and Shaheen and Brown, et cetera. But they were way off on those that were conservative. So I think it was a very big win for conservatives last night in a lot of ways. Same Brown back in Kansas, the governor there had been 12 points down. He wins the election. So there were a lot of wins to rejoice in as conservatives, not as Republicans, but as conservatives. But there was a real dichotomy of things when you got over into the ballot initiatives. There were 146 ballot initiatives last night in 42 states. By and large, kind of predictable in some areas. The ones that tried to limit guns, they went down. The ones that supported the Second Amendment, they went up. But we only won one pro-life initiative last night out of 4. There were 4 pro-life measures. We only won one of those. And it really wasn't a pro-life measure. It was a limit the judges kind of a measure. We did not do well with marijuana. Marijuana expanded across the nation again. Just a lot of moral areas that did not go well. What went well last night was limit government. You had states like Arkansas who said, we're not going to let any rule become a law in the state unless the legislators vote on it, which needs to be done in D.C. Of course, the House has passed that bill, but the Senate would not take it up under Harry Reid. But that gets rid of regulatory law. There were a lot of states last night that said, we have appointed commissions. We want them changing to elected commissions. We don't like not being able to get at our officials who are making decisions. So that was very good. The bad part last night was across the nation, in ballot initiative after ballot initiative, there were ballot initiatives that were regulating or sticking requirements on business, and they all passed. It's like, well, we can tax business because that's business. No, business is you. No business pays a tax. Only people pay taxes. And so that means prices of products will go up. Competition has gone down. There was more government takeover of business last night, which I found very interesting. Kind of, that schizophrenic dichotomy. On the one hand, we really elected a ton of conservatives, but on the other hand, we really stuck it to business. And in a number of states last night that are known for high taxes, they found a very innovative way to get their people to agree to even higher taxes without people recognizing it. And that was, they aren't saying let's tax the people. They're saying let's issue $500 million in bonds for highways. Well, bonds are indebtedness, and anytime you have indebtedness, you will pay for it. You may pay in higher property taxes, higher school taxes, higher city taxes, but bonds is just another way of taxing you, but it pushes it down the road a little bit before we tax you. And all of the bond measures passed. I mean, so people on one hand really made big changes in D.C., but on the other hand, they put themselves into more indebtedness in their states. So it was kind of a mixed night. As I look at the results and analyze them, it's kind of a worldview problem. I think most people don't know that bonds are indebtedness. I don't think they understand the free market system enough to know that when you start regulating businesses, you start increasing consumer prices. Those would be part of the downsides, but overwhelmingly we did very well. The other thing I'd point to is what we did with freshmen last night. I don't think I've seen a freshman class that is so committed and so focused on going in to make positive changes since 1994 with the Republican Revolution, when you had J.C. Watts and Steve Largent and Helen Chenoweth, and that class of 94. These are the same high-caliber guys. They are very faith-oriented guys. They're very principle-oriented. They know exactly why they're there. And already folks like Ken Buck out of Colorado, one of the freshmen, has already organized the freshmen into a very strong coalition. Clint Didier out of Washington, Bruce Pollock, one out of Maine. You have Jody Heiss and Barry Loudermilk out of Georgia, and Gary Palmer out of Alabama. All these new guys are organized against leadership. They do not like the direction the U.S. House has been going. They don't like where Boehner's been taking it. So they're ready to go in and have some pretty big fights. And this coming 11th, 12th, and 13th next week is when they'll have all the leadership elections. Boehner will undoubtedly be reelected as Speaker, but expect changes to happen in what's called the NRCC. That's where Republicans put their money to recruit and elect congressmen. The last several sessions of Congress through congressmen like Greg Walden and Pete Sessions, they have taken a hard turn to the left in who they recruit for Congress. Expect that to change. Expect probably Roger Williams to be elected. The freshmen are very dedicated to making a change in where Republicans put their money, the kind of races they put it into. So there's some good things already happening from the new freshman class that's going in, and I think we'll see some of that in the elections. And none of that will be reported next week when it happens, but it will be seismic, and it can be earth-shifting for what will happen in 2016.
Thank you so much for giving that breakdown, David, because you're right. We don't hear about a lot of this anywhere else. Some of the other things that I think made a difference, an organization I'm not familiar with, Federation for Children, was talking about that wherever the unions put money, they flunked. Their candidates didn't do well, where the school, the NEA, the teaching unions, the school unions their candidates did not do well. And I haven't seen the breakdown yet on where Planned Parenthood put money as far as their candidates, whether they did well or not. But
they did very poorly. Planned Parenthood did poorly. Another group called Stand with Children is a pro-Common Core group, and they targeted, you may recall, I was part of this 6 years ago, Danny Carroll and others, those who had introduced the pro-marriage amendments, traditional marriage amendments. The folks we called the gay mafia went after them, the five homosexual billionaires. You have Pat Stryker and all these others that went after and put money into state races, and they took out a number of the state leaders who had introduced marriage amendments, and very successfully so. Other groups have now popped up on their issues, and one is Stand with Children, and they went after the guys who have introduced anti-Common Core measures, get our state out of Common Core. They poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into individual races, millions overall into races across the nation, and they were thoroughly beat back. They went after the leaders in Oklahoma. Both the leaders, House and Senate, won re-election. They went after the leader in Michigan. He won re-election. They went after the leader in Alaska. She won re-election. So they did very poorly on that, and Planned Parenthood also did very poorly. Great notable is the tens of millions that they poured into the Udall race in Colorado, where they made abortion the issue, the war on women and abortion, reproductive rights, and that did not go well. And especially in the last 2 weeks, they poured in millions and millions in advertising on that issue. And Colorado went very much the other direction with Cory Gardner. So Planned Parenthood did not do well, nor did the Common Core groups that got involved.
And I want to get to where we go from here, David. I'm talking with David Barton from Wall Builders. He's written a new book with George Barna. Great book, very fascinating with a lot of statistics, not in a boring academic dry way, but just very readable, conversational read on helping you understand where America used to be, where she is now, and where we possibly need to go. I hope that's a good way of saying it. But I want to ask you one more question before we go to that. Texas. We were talking about Planned Parenthood and the races there. There's no other race, I think, that probably had the interesting twists and turns. Wendy Davis and Greg Abbott.
Yeah, it's an interesting race, and it's interesting. There was a group called Battleground Texas that said, we're going to come in and we're going to turn Texas purple. And Texas is a very red state, and people, I think, missed the point of that because they saw Wendy Davis as, they're going to try to get Wendy Davis elected. No. This group used Wendy Davis as an excuse to raise money for other things. They knew Wendy Davis was going to lose probably by 18 points. She lost, I think, by 21 in the final tally. So her big issue was abortion. That's what made her the star in Texas for the Democrats, was she filibustered an anti-abortion bill that we had in the legislature, and that made her the hero for those folks. Well, Battleground Texas was not looking to get her elected. They would have been thrilled if she had been elected. But they poured millions and millions and millions into lower-level races, this is something conservatives often fail to see. But they poured millions into county races and school board races and mayor races, et cetera. And they particularly went into urban areas where they already have some blue strength. They went into Houston and Dallas and San Antonio, et cetera. And they understand that the way to turn a state blue, or if you're red, you do a purple first and then blue, is you don't do it by starting at the top, you do it by starting at the bottom. And so they used Wendy Davis as a reason to raise money, because people give to big-ticket names and big-ticket races. They don't give to school board races, but they will give to governor's races. They raised the money, but then they put it into local pushback. So we don't have a good analysis yet of how well they did or how well they did not do, but there's a great DVD out called Rocky Mountain Heist, which documents how that was done in Iowa and then particularly in Colorado. If you remember 8 years ago, Colorado was as red as they come. There's nothing more red than Colorado, and now they're very blue until last night. They've come back in at least a purple direction, perhaps even a red direction. But it's because they went in and started working at the county level to take the farm team, and the farm team is what produces your legislators and then eventually your congressmen, et cetera. And so that's what Battleground Texas was about. Wendy Davis lost big. That was not a surprise to anyone who watched any of the races. But what we don't know is what happened to those tens of millions of dollars that they put into local races, because those races takes a little longer to get them reported. That'll be something that we analyze over the next couple of days to see how well they did or how much ground they picked up.
All right. Thank you so much for giving us the update. And I think it was an evening of hope for many Americans, beyond Republican, Democrat, beyond liberal, left, right, conservative, all of that. I think most and as I told our listeners earlier, David, bad policy is not discriminatory. Bad policy sweeps everybody across the aisle. We have women making less than they did before the Obama administration. 3.7 million more women are hurting. We have the black community hurting. Bad policy hurts everyone, no matter what your party affiliation is. And so you kind of bring us back with your book of what we need to do from here. And I had kind of asked you, win or lose, where do we go from here?
Well, let me throw in kind of a warning note so that people don't get discouraged or disaffected. While there were really good gains last night, already when the races were moving, of course, across the time zones, you have two time zones, at least voting-wise. On the East Coast, you had those that closed at 6, those that closed at 6:30. You had 2 time zones in the Central Time. Some closed at 7, some closed at 7:30. Then you got over in the Mountain Time Zone, and by the time we got the Mountain Time Zone, the Republicans had already taken control of the Senate. And the White House released last night a statement that says, we will not change in any way, shape, fashion, or form. As a matter of fact, by Christmas, we're going to do executive orders that give blanket amnesty to illegals that are here. And so they made very clear they're moving faster in the opposite direction, that this election has no bearing on them. And if you look at what has happened to the House, there are 365 bills that were passed by the House. 200 of them were unanimous bills that Harry Reid refused to pick up. Another 100 of those bills were passed by 75% Democrat support. So you have this massive agenda that's been stuck in the House, and Harry Reid and the White House have been talking about how Republicans are obstructionists. Well, sorry, there's 365 bills, Harry, that you haven't picked up. So now that McConnell will head that, a lot of those bills will occur, and they'll get picked up. But what's going to happen? The president's not going to sign them. So there's not going to be a significant change in agenda or direction. If I were the president, I would this morning in my cabinet meeting say, all right, guys, I want you to double down on regulatory orders. I want more regulations written that enforce law. And for folks who don't know, in the last cycle, we had 3,800 new federal laws added to the books, but only 126 of them went to the Congress and were signed by the president. The others were regulatory laws. So if I were him, I would go to the EPA and say, double down. I would go to the Department of Transportation and say, double down. I want more regs. I want more laws through regs. And I think that's what we'll expect to see. And so people who may have looked at the election last night as a message to the president, and this is going to turn the country in a more wholesome direction, be prepared for 2 years of bare-knuckle fighting because there is not going to be significant major changes. Now, the House and the Senate, Jeff Sessions is now the chairman of the Budget Committee in the Senate. They will shut the money down, but that's not going to keep these things, regulations, from being written, because they will not be able to totally defund these 19 cabinet-level departments that meet at the cabinet meetings. They're not all cabinet-level departments. EPA is not cabinet-level, but they meet at the cabinet-level meetings. They can't defund those 19 agencies. They can stop a lot of the funding, but that doesn't stop the regulatory rule-writing power. I think you will see over the next month in the lame duck session, there are still 60-some-odd judges that Obama wants on the courts. Watch those to be put on, because now that they've gone to the nuclear option, removed the filibuster, they have been stacking the courts in the last several months with judges at a rapid rate. Expect that to continue until the new swearing in the first week of January. So while last night was a very good statement on where the people are, don't expect much change in policy yet. Expect real battles. This is like the election of 1858 leading up to 1860. There was no middle ground, and you had two sides viciously fighting each other, Republicans and Democrats. The issue back then was slavery and civil rights and equality, but there was no middle ground, no compromise. It eventually led to the Civil War. I don't think we're headed there, but I think we have the same type of combative Congress that we saw in 1858 for those that know much about history. So don't get disenchanted when the message we sent last night doesn't reach the White House and it doesn't affect policy, because we do not have a way to make laws right now because the president will not sign these. And he made very clear last night that he's not moving toward the middle ground. He's not reaching out to reach across the aisle. He's moving further forward with what he wants to do. So
yeah, at first when he interrupted the whole election process to say that he was going to call a meeting for top officials, both sides of the aisle, I thought that was a little strange. And you're right. By the end of the evening, his back was up. This president seems to get his back up a lot, and with an in-your-face mentality is what we see him ruling. And I'm glad you brought up the fact, if you will repeat again for me, David, the number of laws that were passed or added by regulatory or administrative bodies rather than legislative.
Yeah, in 2012, we had over 3,800, I think it's 3,807, I think is what it was, but over 3,800 new laws added to the books, federal laws added to the books. Within that framework of being added to the books, only 127 of them went through the House, the Senate, and were signed by the president. The rest of them were issued by agencies, and they are federal laws. They do give jail time. And Tamara, forgive me for jumping on this, but let me hit this for a minute while we're here.
Sure.
Because what we have right now is And people do not understand the fact that Congress, a number of years ago, delegated lawmaking powers to these unelected bodies, the bureaucrats. And by the way, part of those 365 laws that or bills that were passed by the House, not taken up by the Senate, included repeals of legislative making powers to non-elected bodies. They tried to take that back, just as Arkansas did last night. So as you look across the number of laws that have been passed, since 1993, there have been 81,000 new laws passed by regulation, not by legislators, by regulation. There have been so many of these laws passed that right now, if you were to make a commitment to read 700 pages a week of the federal code, and the federal code is where all these laws are. This is why you can be arrested and thrown in jail. If you were to do 700 pages a week of the federal code, it would take you 25,000 years to read the federal code as it stands right now. Alan Dershowitz, who is a liberal law professor at Harvard, is part of a book called 3 Felonies a Day, and he points out that the average American commits 3 felonies a day because of all these laws, most of which we don't even know what they mean. There's a case that's at the Supreme Court this year. We're involved in a movement called Right on Crime, which is a redoing of criminal justice laws. We have a problem with what we call overcriminalization, and so what we have is a case of the U.S. Supreme Court this year dealing with overcriminalization. It's John Yates, who's a commercial fisherman in Florida. He was coming in with his catch. He had more than 3,000 fish on board, and a federal marine officer boarded his boat to inspect his fish, and they come in with a SWAT team. Now, tell me why you need a SWAT team to board a boat and look at fish, right. But that's what the feds are doing now. It's just like the SWAT teams in the Department of Education. Why does the Department of Education get a SWAT team, you know? So here they come with the SWAT teams, and they check his fish, and they say, we find that you have 72 grouper, which is a fish, that are undersized. We want you to show up at the dock tomorrow with this load, and we're gonna count and do things at that point. So he came in the next day to the dock, and when they recounted, they found only 69 grouper. So they said, oh, you've thrown some overboard. You've destroyed this. Well, there was a debate over how you even measure how long the grouper are anyway, but assuming that the feds were right and that they had 72 and it's down to 69, the fine for that is $500 is your fine, and you can have an attachment put on your fishing license. No. The federal prosecutor went to the Sarbanes-Oxley bill and said, this is document shredding. That bill was passed after Enron to prevent companies from shredding documents. They said by throwing fish overboard, which we think you did, you shredded documents. You're now facing 20 years in jail. So we've gone from a $500 fine to a 20-year in jail fine. Another case at the Supreme Court is called United States versus Bond, where that a woman, her husband was having an affair, and she's really mad at the affair, and so she went to Amazon.com and bought some chemicals to give the lover a rash. You know, make a setup where that we'll show her, so the jealousy and bitterness and whatever. But the federal prosecutor prosecuted her for violating an international chemical arms weapon ban. They've got her under chemical weapons. She went to Amazon.com. So this is what's called over-prosecution, and there are so many federal laws on the book that right now, and by the way, if you're a convicted felon, you lose the right to vote, you lose the right to travel, you lose the right for parental supervision, you lose all these rights, and we now have thousands and thousands of felonies. I mean, in Texas, we have 11 different felonies for how you harvest oysters, and it's not related to health and it's not related to safety, but everything's a felony now, and so we've got to get away from that, but that's the problem with regulatory laws. It causes us to lose our civil rights because unelected people wrote laws.
David Barton. You probably hear my voice or my music starting up if you're listening out there. David Barton, we always want more. We always want more information. Thank you for the work that you do. Wallbuilders.com. I would invite you to go there, learn about our history, but learn about the issues we're facing today, contemporary issues that we're dealing with and that we need to know about, like what he's talking with the regulations and the laws, and also the history imprimis. I just told you about reading the History and Danger of Administrative Law, exactly what David Barton is talking about today. We are out of time. I'm trying to check here. We've got to go, but David Barton, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure, Tamara. Thanks for all you do. God bless you.
It's your country, America. It's your chance. Be encouraged. Never be complacent.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed, fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're gonna make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.